Holly, great to see you. Thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. I always appreciate people making a bit of time for me to come and have a chat because I know you've got 101 other things to do. So I wanted to kick off by asking you about something that you said to me when we last spoke. You said, nobody's going to save you. What did you mean by that? And why does that matter to your business?
Yeah, Paul, it's great. It's great to be here with you, and I appreciate the invitation to come and be a part of this conversation. And I think there's one thing that most folks probably understand um, right now is that nobody is coming to save you. There is this notion that there's a bloodbath on every Fortune 500 company in terms of the workforce reduction. And in the case of the AI displacement, that wave, that tidal wave that just
Yeah,
keeps coming
yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
shore week after week, month after month, we're seeing, a complete abandonment of any responsible leadership, certainly any leadership of the standards that you and I once knew. And so there's a recognition that nobody's coming to save you. These CEOs that are operating off of sheer profit, these politicians that are operating off sheer power and corruption. And then there's the average bear sitting there, and going, I wonder who is going to come and save the day. And I think there's a sobering reality
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's got to be yourself. It's got to be me, myself, and I.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell me about what Athena women, Athena STEM women, I mean, tell us about what you're doing. Because, I mean, in one sense, you are trying to save the day, aren't you? You are trying to help people move forward. I mean, give us a bit of a flavor of what you're trying to achieve.
And I do appreciate that. So Athena, we're trying to widen the bridge into the into the AI economy, so that millions of people don't get locked out.
Yeah.
And I would submit that this whole revolution is not a tech story. It is fundamentally a human story. It is the disruption of our identity in the workforce. And if you think that your worth is tied to your job, or your worth is tied to your productivity, or your company, or your career,
Mm.
or your salary, and then suddenly all of that completely changes, um, there is a sense of self identity that gets lost in the tidal wave. And so folks need to understand that, and what we're trying to do at Athena is we're not trying to produce, these AI black belts through Athena's AI Academy. Instead, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create these adaptive humans that can understand and navigate ambiguity when the floor beneath them is moving at a frenetic pace,
Yeah.
that they still don't emotionally collapse because they don't understand how to operate in this new world order. And that to me is the biggest leadership challenge that a lot of people are underestimating.
Yeah.
And so I'm not here to say that there aren't groups like Athena who support the development of women in STEM and their male allies. I'm not here to say that there aren't community groups organizing. What I'm saying is you need to operate. You can hope for, you can look to, but you better bank on yourself if you're going to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
yourself in this new AI economy. That's my
Yeah, no,
uh,
I get that. Let me ask you though about how you're doing that because I get your point. I mean, there is so much change at the moment, and it's moving really fast, and it's really changing the way lots of things work, isn't it? I mean, more than anything I've ever seen in the past. So how are you going to help people address that? I mean, I take your point that people have to take some responsibility for that. I agree with that. How do you help them navigate such a difficult environment? I mean, what's your sort of approach to working with people?
Yeah, and so in our AI training, we're actually working with an outfit out of England, Full Fathom Five. They're a fantastic group. They're actually working with the European Union for the development of their their rules and regulations around AI implementation, because you folks are far more progressive than we are here in the US. But what we do in our AI Academy is there's real immersive learning. Insofar as we're bringing folks together in community. People learn in community. I'm going to tell you the opportunity to get in and do these experiential, immersive teachings, to do real world experimentation, and get people to understand that the opposite of AI is not humanity. The opposite of AI is isolation.
Mm.
And folks, I think when you're in that fight or flight mode, which I would argue a lot of us are,
Yeah.
then isolation becomes the default. And isolation, Paul, is very, very expensive. Whereas community, that's scalable. And so that's really the sweet spot of the AI Academy that we've taken to market, both for the B2C, for the individuals, and then we're taking the AI Academy into the businesses who want to teach it to their executive leadership team. And just say, guys, girls, before we tell everybody in the company to go figure it out, we actually need to lead from the front.
Right.
We
Okay.
actually need to have a strategy. We actually need to know where are we going to use it, where are we not going to use it, when are we going to use it, how does this align with our culture? Because ultimately, the companies that are going to be successful in this tidal wave are not going to be the ones with some fancy 5-year plan. It's going to be the companies that have the most spectacular relationship with change. And this, by any measure, is going to be the change management undertaking of our lifetime.
Now, let me ask you about that because I mean, I know from my own experience, I mean, getting any kind of change done pretty difficult in organizations. I mean, I mean, I often used to think calling it change management was a rather grand title because not a lot of stuff changed. I mean, so how do you give us a sense of how you do that? Because that's a big ask. And I mean, I totally accept your point about the need for it. But
Mm.
how do you get people to do that? I mean, this idea of an adaptive employee. I mean, how do you help people become that? Um,
I want you to think about what our relationship is with technology
mhm.
and what our relationship is with AI. Because I would submit this isn't, this is new technology. It's going to help our workflow. It's going to do productivity gains, profit gains. It's going to replace humans. All of that is a massive change
Yeah,
order.
yeah,
But what I would say is we're not afraid of the technology. We don't hate the technology. What we're actually doing in that resistance to change is we're grieving. We are grieving certainty. And I want you to think about how many people will stay in a broken marriage that is toxic. It is neglectful. It is emotionally abusive. It is just the two people just don't fit, but yet they maintain that relationship because they want that certainty. And that's no different than any other facet of life where there is a disconnect in what we're doing, but yet the certainty is has the veto authority about what we do and whether we change. And so it's to me it's the greatest human condition. And so as we think about moving into this, I'm going to call it the largest workforce identity crises.
yeah,
If most people identify their worth and their relevance, me included, what is life going to look like when knowledge is now ubiquitous?
yeah,
Nobody has, I'm a community builder. I build coalitions. I lead movements. I get people excited about going in a certain direction that's going to benefit a large group of folks. If that is going to be replaced, then who is Holly? Who am I?
yeah.
What is my worth? Why am I on this planet? What am I doing with this little tiny dash if all of that is going to be taken over by robots? And and then you multiply that by everybody's job, everybody's role that arguably can be replaced by robotics. And that starts to get in a very existential, it's
Yeah,
threatening.
yeah,
And so that's the question that every company gets to wrestle with and grapple with and say, how are we going to bring these people on to learn AI and then only to have them go onto the keyboards, have the agent recognize all of the commands, the work, and then be replaced by it. There has to be somebody, there's got to be a level of leadership psychology. There's got to be a safe space. There's got to be a culture where we're all builders. We're problem solvers. That's what we do. We
Right.
solve problems, small, medium, and at scale. And if those companies can actually lead within that rubric, there's an opportunity to actually co-create what the future looks like rather than just waiting for somebody to come and save the day.
Yeah.
And
And let me let me
that's not
ask
a
you.
relationship folks have.
Yeah.
Most folks have.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the word you just used the phrase co-create. I mean, just explain to people that aren't familiar with how that works. Why is the co-creation process so powerful?
So if we think about every great innovation, there's
Mm.
always a good part to it and there's a bad part to it. We think about nuclear. Think about cars, jets. I
Mm.
mean, these are great, great out, vehicles of innovation. But if we don't handle them and create and manipulate and use them in a proper fashion, they can be destructive. They can be life ending. They can be fatal. And so we always have to remember our place and our agency. Again, when you feel like your existence is threatened, you're not in a creative space.
Mm.
You're in a protective space. You're in defensive posture. And those symptoms of the human experience require us to have a greater level of consciousness about what's happening, what's changing. Everything that I'm doing right now as the CEO of Athena, nothing is being baked on stability. Stability is gone. That thing is in the rearview mirror, like like my ex-husband. It is gone out of here. So everything that I'm doing at my company to manage change, to manage this set of community that is Athena, is to remind people of our power, remind people of our great creative juices that got us here. And if we forget that, then that's on us. And there needs to be more people having conversations like this,
Mm.
reminding people that we are in control until such time we surrender it to fear.
Yeah. So what you're saying, just so I've got this, so what you're saying is that by co-creating the kind of programs that you're talking about, you're helping to put people back in control, which in and of itself motivates people in terms of dealing with the challenges that AI is presenting. I mean, is that
Yeah,
a fair summary?
I mean, yeah, to be a co-creator, and let me just edit that. I'm not giving anybody any power. I don't think of myself in that
Right,
way.
right,
There are some people in this country and in this world who do take that view, but I'm not one of them.
right,
What I am saying is that I'm reminding people, our agency, our confidence. This is not something we build, it's something we remember.
right,
It's like if people could just look in the mirror, if they could look and see what they've done, what they've accomplished, all the things that they've navigated from wars, from global pandemics to shutdowns to global financial crises to depression. I mean, have you looked at who you are and how far you've come and you think this is going to topple you? So I'm not here to give anybody power. I'm here to remind people that we are co-creators. And as soon as we forget that, then we succumb to this notion that we're a victim. We're a victim of
yeah,
our
yeah,
conditions and we're a victim of our circumstances.
yeah,
And that's not true.
yeah. Okay, so let me ask you then, what are you building towards? I mean, you've talked about where you're at now. Give us a sense of where you're going. And I know it's a challenging time, but where would you like to get to with this?
Yeah, well, for one of the reasons that uh, Athena is anchored here in California. We have for 26 years we have been building leaders. The premise of Athena is that we want to provide more women the opportunity to lead within these STEM fields, these science, tech, engineering, and math jobs. We want people to understand that there is massive abundance and massive performance advantages when there is richer and more diverse perspectives and backgrounds,
Right,
educations, geographies, when we have a very robust and comprehensive workforce. looking to solve problems in humanity through science and technology. That is the premise of Athena.
Yeah.
And so what we found 26 years ago is that there was a smaller representation of women. There was about 25% of women that were represented in these STEM jobs. So we did a great deal of research because obviously everybody likes data. And we found that when there was more diversity, there was greater return to shareholder value, there was greater profits, greater, all of the metrics pointed to this is a business case, this is a no-brainer, this is a
Yeah. Yeah.
strategic imperative. So we just wanted to beat that drum. We wanted to educate folks. We wanted to be that advocate, be the voice of women in STEM. And then we wanted to give them an on-ramp and say, hey, listen, we're partnering with all of these big companies
Yeah.
and they're looking to recruit talent and they want really, really, really excited and ambitious talent. So we provided this platform to help them navigate male-dominated industries. That number over 26 years, well, there's been some fluctuation, is largely flattened out. So where I would like, and there's World Economic Forum data, there's UN data, everybody has these grand visions of achieving these more equitable opportunities because they see that that is the best path for a sustainable planet. Because when there's more women in the boardroom, more women in the C-suite, more women and other underrepresented talent, then we actually have a ripple effect across all the other metrics for sustainability. What we want to do is we want women to come in and say, you care about the planet. You care. There's areas of business that women traditionally and more historically care about, like gaming, for example. If there were a greater representation of women in the gaming, maybe we wouldn't have all of the suicides, maybe we wouldn't have all the violence
Yeah.
that is gamified. If we thought about, there's going to be children, here's some of the impacts, here's some of the effects that just weren't considered.
Yeah.
Likewise, women's health, the Apple Watch, they had all these great gadgets in Tim Cook on the rollout of the health of the watch. And they didn't have enough women on the product development team. So guess one of the things that wasn't, one of the capabilities wasn't afforded to the customers. It was monitoring the women's ovulation. So you got half the population that can't even use this health tracker, this great device, because you left out that whole use case.
Yeah.
It
I
just
mean,
didn't occur to you.
it's
And
pretty.
so those are just examples where you're not co-creating. You have a subsample of the total addressable market that is talking about these great use cases, but the people that it could impact aren't at the table, so therefore you've eliminated that use case and the
Yeah.
profits come from it.
Yeah.
So those are the examples that I mean in terms of co-creating. But if the people that are co-creating, the co-creators are just one facet of the total market, then you're going to have a very restricted and a very exclusive AI economy.
Yeah.
That is what we want to make sure doesn't play out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally get that. I mean, I've got three sisters, so and they don't take prisoners, so I have no doubt about the logic of what you're talking about. Let me ask you, have I mean, I don't know how long you've been CEO actually, but how would you say that your personal values have shaped the way you've built the business?
Yeah, I have been the CEO of Athena for going on 10 years. I cannot
Right.
believe it's been almost a decade. This is my third advocacy organization that I have run here in the great state of California. Prior to that, I worked on Capitol Hill for 10 years. I worked in the administration, the Bush administration, as a liaison between the White House and the federal agencies, the Environmental Protection Agency, and at the State Department. And what I will tell you in the last 20 years of my career is that I have learned, certainly in my younger years, I often say I got my PhD in how not to treat people.
Mm.
And what I saw was you had these, 70, 60, 70, 80-year-old men that were still these egos that were so desperate to prove their worth and their validity and their value. And they would eat their young and sell their mother for the preservation of power because that sense of self was so fractured
Mm.
that everything that they deemed themselves had to be constantly affirmed outside of themselves. And so that's why leading these advocacy organizations is right in my sweet spot because there's so much of what we do in our lives that we're looking to affirm outside of ourselves.
Mm.
And it's like, no, it doesn't matter what Paul or Holly say. It does not matter. What matters is I know my core values. I know what it is that's important to me. And if I'm living my life and doing that work, then I'm good. Yeah, am I going to make some mistakes? Yeah, could I have handled that a little differently? Probably. But that just means that I'm continuing to expand and grow. And by the way, those are my core values. And so if I get to have an impact and let somebody else understand life in my viewpoint, and that might work for them, all the better. Stop looking outside of yourself. Stop giving away your power. I never want to give away my power. I never want to do that. And I will do that. And I have done that. I was diagnosed with breast cancer during the global pandemic. And I went into feeling sorry for Holly. And I thought, these hospitals and this global pandemic, and all I did was look outside of myself. Everything. And oh my God, this happened and my stress. And it was an invitation to come home. It was an invitation to get centered. There was no restaurants open. The hospitals were now treating the pandemic. It was just me, myself, and my stories. And you get to sit with your shit and you get to sit with your story sometimes. But that's what isolation did for me. And then I said, okay, this is boring. This is not me.
Mm.
It's so not aligned with my core values. I got to get back out there. And
And you have.
so yeah. And so again, I know what it's like when you give away your power. And we're going to say confidence. I'm going to use power and confidence and agency interchangeably. Because confidence is, to me, it's the opportunity to say whatever happens on Tuesday or May or July or in 2028, I'm confident that it's going to work out exactly how it should. And I'm going to continue to do the work that I do and be open to what's on offer. What
Mm.
am I going to learn? How am I going to grow?
Yeah.
How am I going to treat my colleagues? How am I going to treat my community? How am I going to show up for myself? Those are the questions that support my confidence and feed into my energy and my
Yeah.
drive and my
Yeah.
vision.
And let me ask you about, let me ask, I mean, let me, you've talked a lot about the organization. Tell me about being a CEO in the age of AI. I mean, we've talked about the impact that AI is starting to have. I mean, I think it kind of changes the job of the CEO. I mean, what's your take on being
Yeah.
a CEO in the age of AI?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I would submit, Paul, that we are facing one of the greatest deficiencies in leadership. It is one of the most underinvested categories, bar none. And yet, leadership is what sustains us
Mm.
most.
Mm.
We don't need to get political. We can just see the examples in the politicians. We can see the leadership failures in the CEOs and the corporations. The way, thousands and thousands of people are being deleted in an email, um, ending their 20-year careers with an email. Um, and so for me, it's an opportunity to say the only thing that I have in control is my ability to lead organizations with the adaptive mindset. And if we are resisting and holding on with that death grip to how work used to be and how life used to be, then that is going to be the end of us as we know it. And we're going to be dragged, kicking and screaming and being dragged into this new world order. And so for leaders today, there is a psychology that I don't have all the answers. And leadership once upon a time was about telling Paul what to do and how to do it. Here's the KPIs, here's the metrics,
Yeah.
here's the deadlines. And now the CEO or leadership, just leadership in general, it's no longer managing and dictating. It's actually about coaching. It's about coaching people to think critically, coaching people to rely on their instincts, coaching on people to share feedback, to have collective input, and to really get back into the team element rather than the hierarchy that we've traditionally known of command and control.
Yeah. And how have you, I mean, that sounds like quite a big transition that you've made. I mean, and how difficult was that? I mean, it sounds to me like it must have been quite hard.
Well, and we're still there. This is not a Q1 agenda item. It for me, it's the human condition. As we think about, we have all these folks, Sam Altman, we've got all of these. I call them they call them the PayPal mafia. Those guys are on every media channel. They have a narrative that they are um, controlling that said everything that we know is going to change in 6 months and 12 months and 18 months, kind of like they said the Cybertruck was going to be rolling out. Just like they make all these projections, they make all these predictions. And it's really designed to rock the floor out from underneath us to move society. And where I think the biggest opportunity for leaders is to change our relationship with fear, change our relationship with that certainty. And it's an opportunity and it's an invitation.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting point. How do you do that? I mean, changing your relationship with fear. I mean, I get that. I mean, I totally get that. How do you do that? Because it's not easy, that's not an easy task. And so how? I mean, just give us a sense of how you might help people with that.
So think about World War II. And women, we made babies, we cleaned the house, we did domestic chores, and then there's like, wait a minute, we've got to help. We don't have enough capacity. We've got to get women to come into the
Yeah,
manufacturing because
yeah,
we've
yeah.
got to make. So that, how do you do that? How do you make that change where women were like, do as you're told and you make babies and clean the house. And now we're going to invite you into the workforce and you're actually going to help create technology and you're going to help win this war. And you're going to come in here and manufacture and work 12-hour days. And you're going to do something that you have never been afforded ever in the history of mankind. That is how change happens at that scale because the conditions force it. And all of them came with great pride because they were doing it for the country. They were doing it for
And are you saying that's happening now?
it's an excess. It's life or death, right? This is what
Right.
the PayPal mafia is communicating, that you're either going to come with us or you're going to be completely locked out. I mean, this is a war of sorts because we are going up against a society that is not going to require humans in the way that we've traditionally
Yeah.
been used and seen. So if every knowledge is now accessible, if we know that the only thing that the AI economy can't do is inhumanity, that is the opportunity to come in and say, what are the things that we can do? How can we create communities? How can we get back to people? I mean, you've seen the suicide rates, you've seen the antidepressant use
Yeah.
rates.
Yeah.
We do not have community. And so the irony is that you've got AI that's going to strip us of all the technology, right? Now we're going to do it. We've got all these agents. We can do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. The one thing that we can't do is the empathy, the connection, the intuition, the wisdom, the care, the values. That is quintessential human. And so it literally let's just look into the future and say that it's going to force us to come back to our the human side,
So
because we're
that
all
sounds
budgeting.
that sounds to me to be a pretty positive story. I mean, it sounds
It
like big
is a
picture.
positive
Yeah.
story, but we
Yeah.
but we need to be but we need to have people talking about what kind of future do we want to co-create? What if we could remove technology and get rid of all of this crap with this crack device in our face? You see families at restaurants at the pizza place with their crack device at their face. We're now going to take that away, so we're just going to be left to be a part of our communities. to get back into the human side of life. What does that look like? Who wants to lead that charge? How are we gonna fund ourselves? How are we gonna contribute to the economy if we don't have a salary, if I don't have a great 401k, if I don't have, what does that look like? I don't know. But let's figure that out
Yeah.
and let's approach it like our life depends on it.
Yeah, well, it does, doesn't it, really? Let me ask you about decision making. I mean, to come back to the point about being a decision maker in the age of AI, I mean, what would you say has been, when you look back on the what you've been doing with Athena, what would you say your worst decision was? We'll talk about the good ones in a second, but what was the most difficult or perhaps the poorest decision you've made?
Wow. Well, then I'll say difficult. I won't say worse. The difficult decision. So for us last year with the new administration here in America, day one there was an executive order to wipe out all diversity across the federal government, all funding, any provision that had women or anything related to diversity was eliminated. Women's research, women's health, all of that was deleted out of the federal files, the
No, that's
federal
a pretty tough situation to deal with.
day one of this administration, letting the country know this is my number one focus. It sent quite the signal. And so at Athena, we decided we were not going to abandon our mission, which is to advance 1 million women in STEM by 2030, that we wanted to hold true to our values. And those companies that abandoned them for fear of being attacked, um, if you have federal contracts with the government. And we decided we were going to be true to our values. And those companies that can weather the storm, because these are politicians that come in and come out. But we've been here for a quarter of a century, and we're going to be here for another quarter of a century. Not because we went with whatever the political headwinds, but because we stayed true to our values. Everything that we do in life, if it is predicated on your values, then you get to hold yourself, you get to hold your head high and go,
Yeah.
you know what? I went left and maybe I should have gone right, but I know that I led with my values and I'm okay with that
So
because
what, so
that's
what
what
you're
gives my
saying is that your values kind of underpin the way you make decisions.
absolutely. I talk about that in my TED Talk. I mean, everything that I do, I make decisions and my confidence is reinforced because it's driven by my values. And if I do that, I'm in alignment, then I'm okay with however wherever the chips fall. So we said we're not going to eliminate women out of our mission. We're not going to eliminate women from our domain, athenastemwomen.org. We're not going to abandon the women. We tell the women not to abandon themselves, to stand up in the
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
right? To articulate their value proposition, to negotiate for salaries, to negotiate for a promotion, to be able to understand who you are and what you bring to the table. And then for us to do something opposite of that, just so we can stay afloat for 4 years, that didn't sit with me. So we went out in a very public way, made a public statement, pushed out a video, and declared and say, hey, we spent some time at the board. We did a voice of the customer. We did surveys. We spoke with folks and qualitative and quantitative data, and every one of you said stay the course. So we're going to stay the course. And within a couple of days, I lost a third of our business. Our corporate partners who turned to us for the last 25 years for the development of their leaders, and said, we just can't. We can't. The politics are too grave. And so we're out.
Yeah.
And all of our members under the partnership, all of those women, you need to remove them out of your database.
Mm. I mean, it sends a terrible message, doesn't it?
I mean, and so I have to go to the board and say we're living our values and we're responsible enough, stewards of our nonprofit dollars. So we have some breathing room to navigate the storm. A lot of nonprofits, on average, probably have about 6 months runway. We're very fortunate. We have a couple of years, but that impact, and then obviously another layer of the AI displacement. Another layer of kind of the burnout, kind of the burnout crises, the vitality deficit crises that's happening because of, obviously these other layers is creating a work environment where people are in survival mode. They are not
Yeah,
going
yeah.
into community. They're not showing up for themselves. They're not investing in their future. They are in quicksand. And
And let me
so
ask you, have those decisions changed the way you think about risk? Because I mean, what you said, what you were just saying was, we decided to do this and we knew there would be some negative consequences. I mean, has that changed the way you feel about risk? Has it worked out better or worse than perhaps you thought?
no, I knew what was going to happen because a lot of these corporate partners, they're the big companies that
Mm,
are getting contracts with the administration. So they've got multi millions of dollars
mm,
on the ledger, or they've got employees that they have to look to and support the culture. Who are they going to choose? Their culture code or the dollars? And we saw
mm,
a third of those choose the dollars, um, and and to the detriment of these employees. But I also know that there's the seasons and cycles of life, right? There are cycles, the business cycles, cycle out, cycle out. And what I want to do, Paul, is I want to look at 2030. I want to look at 2040. I want to act like it's 2030, and I want to look in the rearview mirror and go, how did you show up? However this story plays out, how did you show up? And if I can take some level of respect and pride and um, kind of a care, a level of decency, then I'm okay. I'm okay.
yeah,
I'm okay with that. What I will say is the risk is always the risk for any decision for me is always in co-pilot with my values. And running a global women's leadership lab, you cannot lead a leadership lab and do it without any values, any
yeah,
rudder.
yeah,
That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I will also say that while I don't have the answers on how we're going to navigate this, if we
mm,
continue to see companies jump ship and abandon for federal contracting, federal funding, and not being subjects of litigation for excluding other people, um, I also know that there's momentum, and I also know that nothing is staying still. There's always things that are organizing, and I have to be open to that. I have to have so many conversations with people that are also taking a lot of risks, leading with their values. And at some point, I have to believe and I have to trust the journey, and I
mm,
have to trust that opportunity is going to when it shows up, I'm going to seize it.
mm,
And that opportunity is getting with like-minded people that have the same values, that want to drive the same impact, and don't want to be victims of their circumstances.
yeah, yeah.
I
I mean,
believe in that.
what you're saying is the risk is not making a mistake. The risk is not exploiting the opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Said better. And I also, I've been on this planet for half a century. I also have the benefit of seeing what happens when we succumb to fear.
Yeah,
And when we just trust the journey, and I know that sounds, some people like, trust the journey, that's a bunch of hogwash. No, it's not. When you've lived long enough and you've seen every pivot and every divot that you've taken and how that's actually worked out for your benefit, so take some time to reflect on your life, on your journey, on the opportunities that presented themselves, not because you were operating from a place of, oh, I'm going to avoid risk. I'm going to avoid anything that looks like, it's not certain or guaranteed. I'm out. Look at how you've been rewarded.
mm,
And I have been rewarded. When I moved to London, when I moved to the nation's capital, when I moved to California, those were all high risks. And every one of them were beautiful, beautiful orchestrations of trusting the journey, knowing your worth, knowing your desire, and letting it all play out. Not everybody wants to trust the journey and they want to be able to, with their five senses, see it, touch it, feel it. before they can
Yeah.
jump into
And,
that.
and
And I
let me,
respect that.
let me ask you about that point that you made about reflecting, because I think that's a really interesting point. Would you say that as you've sort of gained experience, I mean, you're 10 years down the track as the CEO of Athena, would you say that that has changed your definition of what good decision making is?
I don't know that I would change my. It wouldn't be change. It would be fortify. It would be strengthen. Um, I do, by virtue of being a CEO, I do have a certain risk profile.
Hmm.
I take big risks, but every time I have, I've been rewarded. And I remember when I did take a risk and it didn't work out, and I knew in pretty short order, I had quit my job, and left the country and on Pennsylvania Avenue and went over to London. And this is during the Great Recession. This was 2007. I didn't know I had just stepped on it. And I was like, wow, it's like this is 50 cents to the dollar. Oh my God, I don't have a job. I don't have a visa. Oh my God. And I just wanted some international experience. I wanted to grow. I was bored with DC, that whole, circle of the circus, the egomaniacs, and I really wanted a different and a bigger playground. And when I got there, I said, you know what? This isn't working. The timing isn't mine. I want something bigger and I want something better. And then I pivoted and came to California with I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anybody. I'd been to California, but I didn't really know about the innovation economy. I didn't know about anything. But I just was called, and that was 20 years ago, and it was the greatest privilege of my life. And the opportunities that I had been afforded. If I didn't take that risk, if I didn't go to
Yeah,
London,
yeah,
find that, yeah, you know what, your timing sucks. My dad said, Holly, timing's great. Hell of a timing. And I said, okay, I'm going to turn around. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not going to go back to DC. I sold everything I own. Walked away from my six-figure job. That's not an option. What else is on the horizon? And came to California and voila. So again, we have our lived experiences, but if we're not reflecting on them and getting introspective, understanding the past and the trends that are our friend, then it's a treasure chest of information and wisdom that can inform how we're going to embrace the next wackadoodle chapter in
yeah.
this era.
Yeah, wackadoodle's a good way of describing it, I think.
Woo!
Can I ask
Woo!
you, you just mentioned wisdom. I mean, if you were, you know, to offer some advice to a CEO starting out on a journey like yours, I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say, and I say this on every stage I'm invited to, is building the level of confidence in your employees that it is safe. It is a safe place to co-create. It is a safe place to take risks. It's a safe place to ask stupid questions, smart questions. There is no, and it's a place where we're actually going to be the engine of this next race. I want these companies and these folks to take back their power.
Mm.
And if the leaders of these companies don't continually beat that drum, um, then we're going to be at the biggest disadvantage, and we're going to be left out of what that future looks like.
Mm.
So for me, it's the greatest invitation to upgrade our leadership. Again, I'm going to say this. I said this earlier, Paul. We are not here to control and command. We're here to coach. And that's a new skill set for managers and
Mm.
for leaders.
Yeah,
We've got to coach. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm coaching you. Every great coach, that take them to the Super Bowl or take them to the playoffs or take them to the big game, they're creating a culture, they're creating a teamwork. None of us can do this without the rest of us. It takes a team, it takes a collective, and from Athena's standpoint, it takes a community. And if everybody continues to choose the isolation path, I mentioned earlier, isolation is so expensive. It's
yeah.
expensive emotionally. It's expensive in the marketplace. It's expensive on so many levels. But the point is, we've got to get back to the coaching, the community. And for me, if we can create that movement where people feel safe, they feel like they belong, and that nobody gets left behind in the AI economy, then I'm living my values.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think you've bitten off quite a big task. I mean, I like to see a bit of ambition because I think it's going to be a bit of an uphill struggle. But I mean, I appreciate you having a go at it because I think you're absolutely right. And your point, I think, about creating spaces that are safe is really, really good advice. So thank you, Holly. Thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. Thank you for telling the story. I mean, like I said, I've got three sisters and they don't take any prisoners, and I don't think you're going to take any prisoners either. So good luck going forward. I mean, it sounds like it will be an interesting journey.
Yeah, thank you. And I just would invite everybody. For us, the biggest privilege is to turn that panic into possibility.
Yeah,
And that's where I want to hang my hat. So thanks for inviting me to come onto your show. It's a pleasure to meet you, Paul. And the story is just getting written.
just getting written. Good stuff. All right, see you soon, Holly.
Thank you. All
Bye
right,
bye.
bye bye now.